If you collect late 1930s, early 40s dresses like I do, something that you will soon find is at least, I would say, 50% of them are missing their belts because they're 80-year-old beauties and they've been passed around a bit, and of course belts go missing. And most of them did have belts, and it's interesting to think why. We're looking at wartime era. So we've got fabric rationing, which meant that the longer skirts of the 30s and the way that 30s clothes were often cut on the bias to emphasize the female form, that was out because fabric rationing meant skirts had to be narrower, shorter. They had to be cut on a straight of grain because cutting on the bias uses up quite a lot of fabric. So women were used to that kind of emphasis on the female form, and the belts of the wartime era, when the kind of silhouette was narrower, perhaps slightly more, I don't like this word, slightly more boxy than the 30s era. Wearing a belt was a way to emphasize the female figure. And the dresses of this era were made from, I can hear the dog. So you're not going to come huffing and puffing and disturb me. You are. Not both of you. Not both of you. No, no, no. No, no, Mum's filming. You mustn't be pesty while Mum's filming. You know, you mustn't huff and puff into the microphone either, and puff and pant. No, no puffy panties. No puff. Can you just give Mummy 10 minutes? So, thread. So yes, so belts were used to emphasize the female figure, and they were usually made in the same fabric as the dress. So this poses a little problem if your dress is missing its belt, because with fabric being rationed then, it meant that you might do, but you'd be really lucky to find a deep hem or somewhere that you could scrounge an entire length of fabric for your belt from. So you're probably looking at making a fabric belt from fabric that you have around today. So you might think as a dressmaker I would have lots of convenient spare fabric to make belts with, but in fact no, because I love prints. Many, like the dress I'm wearing now, many vintage dresses are in prints too, and of course the printed fabric I have is not the same as the printed dresses I have. So I was looking for plain fabric and finding a fabric seller that really wants to sell you a thin strip of fabric, not really gonna happen. I mean, they will sell narrow width, but still more than you would want to make a belt. So you can buy fabric scraps, which is what I did. Of course, the scraps don't come in a nice convenient long strip, but you can piece them together, and indeed, as every historic costumer will say, piecing is period. In previous times, we're used to seeing seams where you might not expect seams to be. It's just in our modern era of fast fashion, we've become unused to it. So I'm quite happy to piece, and that's how I decided to make my belts. Now, there's no problem with buying vintage buckles. The ones that I chose to use today they're quite simple ones, and they were really inexpensive, but you can buy all kinds of very decorative buckles in collide, enameled ones. So just to show you a few from my collection, there's this rather amazing peacock. I have this is what I mean by the kind of carved ones, this like carved coral and kind of molded, might be a better way to say, these kind of molded buckles. and mother of pearl, which was really popular and really easy. It goes with nearly everything. I've got an example is I've got this large mother of pearl buckle. This really pretty buckle here can be quite large, and actually it's interesting that I've ended up using my smaller buckles. I do have some larger ones like this fabulous red Art Deco one and a brown one there, and then some rather gorgeous tortoiseshell ones here. Probably thumping them on the table, aren't I? So if you're thinking, oh, wouldn't it be easier just to buy a belt? Of course, you can buy modern leather or plastic belts. They don't necessarily look completely right with these dresses. Can be done. Or you can also find, and they won't necessarily go with all your vintage dresses, but you can find some rather beautiful belts that were made during this era. And I just brought this one to show you. And as you can see, the background has been cross-stitched and all the flowers have been crocheted along with the stem that joins them together down the center. And this belt cost maybe about a quarter of the amount of a vintage dress. I mean, actually no more expensive than a modern leather belt. So it's just, you don't actually see them around that often. You look out for them. That is another option, and they are rather beautiful. I have to say, this is absolutely my favourite era for fashion. There was something about the rationing that it sort of encouraged originality and ingenuity. So although details had to be concentrated on the top of the dress, for example, there's some gorgeous detailing, which is actually something that I think I might talk about more next week. So having said all that, I'm going to get on and show you the vintage dresses I have, which include the one I'm wearing, that were missing their belts. So this is the scene that lies in front of me. And as you can see, I actually have 7 vintage dresses. They're all from the late 30s, early 40s. What I've done is I've just used what I've got, so I hustled through fabric scraps that I have and the belt buckles that I already have. So first up is this floral print rayon dress, and I've got this flowery blue and white enamelled buckle. I'm going to use I've got 2 pieces of it, so I'll have enough of this silk taffeta to make the belt. Move that. Perhaps I can do like a conveyor belt. Then there's this really pretty, it's quite fragile, little floral print early 40s dress. I'm entirely happy with it. I'm loving the buckle here, which is absolutely perfect with it. It's kind of echoes the shape of the little pink flowers. And all I could find, because the colours are quite faded, I'm going to keep looking, see if I can find anything better, but if not, just a really thin belt from this rather shocking pink. It doesn't look too bad. Put this aside. So this one, I've got these 2 fabric scraps, sorry, which won't be enough, but I've got 3. I've got this blue fabric that I actually used my colour block top, but I thought I could use this fabric to back these sari scraps. Make a blue and white belt to go with it, and then just with a really simple mother of pearl buckle. So next, this is like a jazzy blue and white dress, and I'm definitely going to use this is my blue Liberty Tunnel colour block fabric. I'm going to use that for the belt, and then another little mother of pearl buckle. And then dress has this really fun novelty print. Wasn't that easy to match the colours. Show you a close-up. These like little folk art people. It's really sweet. And I've got some silk taffeta in this colour, which just picks up on the green of the dress. It's going to be a very narrow belt, narrower than I'm showing here, and then a little square mother of pearl buckle. And I'm glad I found one with a prong, because I want to show you too how to make a belt with an eyelet hole. So that's that one. Ooh, this one, such a pretty print. And as you can see, I've put quite a few little alternatives. Have I included that? I suppose that's sort of yellowy green. It's got that little square shape that echoes the square shape of the pattern. It's really much narrower because you cut the fabric to fit in here. Just show you. So when you're measuring up to do the belt, you want to measure just a millimetre or two in from that bar so that the belt will easily go through. And then one more one, so pretty, lovely little collar detail. So I'm definitely using this belt buckle, and it's one of the ones that have, you can see it has a clasp, which part of the problem is that I'm up in the loft in the hottest heat wave time of the year, so I'm struggling. So it does up like that. And I'm going to pick out this colour as well, the kind of bluey green. And I might have quite liked lilac, but I don't have any lilac, so I'm going to go with that. So I've ironed on a piece of fusible interfacing, that's to the middle of the belt. And then what you do is you fold over and then machine stitch the edges until you have this. Using the turner, here's the two pieces in a medium size, so I'm going to put there, and then you just squidge like that all the way down. One. What I realise is it's almost like a psychological thing, that the moment you think, oh, it's just not going to work, it's just not going to go through, is actually the moment before it actually does. So now I'm going to take this and then you push it through. And I mean, I have to confess, I have seen this done more elegantly by other people. So now it's pressed, you can see how it's going to fit through this little belt buckle. And to get your measurement accurate, I could do it by eye, but a lot of people do it by actually proper measuring. So if you were going to do it with proper measuring, what you would do is you would measure the distance of the gap that the belt's going to have to fit through. And obviously you then want it to be just like this one here, just a tiny bit smaller, because you don't want it getting too squashed and tight at the edges. So you want that distance. You obviously want to double it because you've got two sides of the belt, and then you want to add a little extra for seam allowances. So you could say twice this measurement plus, I know, an inch, so half an inch seam allowance. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this through and then just overlap it here and stitch those ends. And that's another thing when you're doing your waist measurement. I mean, obviously this is me, so I always have a waist measurement that's vastly larger than my own to be on the safe side, but then I usually have to cut a bit off the end of the belts because you don't actually want a trailing tail. But if you are being more sensible about it and including your waist measurement, you obviously want enough that, let me show you, that when the belt does come through, you want enough through there again. You want it so that you've got a few inches here. You don't want it so that there's like a massive great as often happens with me. And if you have a big tail, but you want about that much, and also enough that you can stitch it down here. Right, so I'm going to get out of this loft before I faint. We've got a heat wave at the moment, and the loft is definitely the hottest place. So this is the belt with the prong, and what I need to do is make a hole here for it to go through, then add an eyelet to the other end. I've got this kit, got a little range of colourful eyelets. Then that little ring goes into place, and that's my finished eyelet, and that's what it looks like on the reverse. And here I am with my blue and white sari belt, which goes with my novelty print sailorboat dress. Has that white mother of pearl buckle, so it's a little blue and white ensemble. And as you can tell from the noisy seagulls, I live by the sea, and I was actually quite happy with this pink belt, pink silk taffeta with a pink clasp, and this rather delicate early 40s dress with a very sweet print, and then this very colourful print dress with the purple silk taffeta belt and the square green buckle, which matches the print nicely. And I'm just going to show you a quick close-up of that. And then the red folk art novelty print 40s dress with the green of the belt picking up on the green print pattern in the dress, and the mother of pearl buckle with the eyelet fixture. And this rather jazzy blue and white dress, which I just did a very simple blue belt and a white mother of pearl buckle. And then this really pretty print dress, which I just managed to squeeze myself into with the bluey green taffeta belt and the green clasp. And then this really pretty print dress with the blue silk taffeta belt. I put some rick-rack braid around the edge and used just a simple yellow square buckle in the end. And I'm really pleased with this dress. And then I thought it would be nice to show you what dresses that still have their original belts are like with the self fabric. So this is a little early 40s dress with a self fabric belt, and another one with a self fabric belt. So bye from me and Treacle. Bye. See you next week. Bye.